Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Silmarillion Film Project. This is session number 32 of Season 6. It is indeed the penultimate session of Season 6. We have finished the discussion of the season proper, and we're now in the final post-production phase here, as we're going to be looking at some of this evening. We're going to be looking at some of the art contributions that have been made, sort of different suggestions and contributions of things that we can kind of help us to, as we reflect back on the season, think about some of the ways in which those could be visualized. We did a session, of course, earlier in the season where we talked about some of the things that we would love to be able to try to visualize, and so we're going to be doing some of that visualization here this evening. Our final session, which will be in a few weeks, is going to be on the music, when we will get to what I always look forward to, hear the work of Philip Menzies and his increasing musical team of folks who have been working on, of course, the significant challenge of music in this season, as there's quite a lot of it going on there. So I'm joined this evening by our writer's room, Nick and Marie. Thanks for being with us here this evening. Quick announcements. Our fall moot season is approaching. So we've had Myth Moot just happened a week and a half ago, which was a lot of fun. Nick, you guys did. I wasn't able to be there because I was scheduled for another event that conflicted with it, which I saw the schedule. I was like, what? Come on. But anyway, yeah, I couldn't be there. But you guys did episode 13, right?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And anybody who had Moot Hub or Moot Cat, is it still Moot Hub?
Moot Hub,
yeah. Should be able to catch that. I did catch both of the two things that I missed that.
Yes, exactly. That were conflicting.
The Crescent Studios talks.
Yeah,
and I missed for doing SilmFilm.
Yeah, I couldn't do either the rehearsal or the performance. So anyway. That was sad. It was the first time I've not been able to be in the performance, for SilmFilms. Anyway, but it's fine. It's fine. not bitter. But glad that was good. I heard good things about that. That's always fun. Our regional moots for the fall, we have 5 regional moots scheduled in this fall season, starting September 23rd in Portland, Oregon. Cascade Moot, that's the first time we've been to the Pacific Northwest, which I've been hoping to do for a long time, so excited for that. Middle Moot, our oldest regional moot, is going to be back for year 7. I think this might be the 7th Middle Moot, on October 14th in Waterloo, Iowa. Then New England Moot on October 21st here in Derry, New Hampshire, near me. And then Mountain Moot, our second Mountain Moot, out in Denver, Colorado on November 4th, followed by our first ever Bayou Moot down in New Orleans on December 2nd. So that's 2 locations we've never been to before, Portland and New Orleans. So going to be a fun fall as we move through stuff. So, all right. We get the whole map today, which we probably won't need, but actually we might want to refer back to it at some points. Like,
I
for
was tempted
instance,
to leave it out, but the first topic is
when
location.
we talk about location. So there have been, of course, some seasons in which we've had to do extensive location spotting, and this is us trying to figure out what kind of landscape we're looking for a lot of the locations, the primary locations. But of course now by season 6, we have a lot of the basic areas already sort of pegged. Fortunately, our budget is enormous, so we're able to film on location really everywhere around the world. We'll have episodes where a handful of scenes are shot on one continent and a handful of other scenes are shot on a different continent. And fortunately, we can just pull that off pretty easily. So
it's actually not the, by the way, Brian's in the chat. Awesome.
Oh,
it's actually not that expensive to shoot on location anymore, because all you have to do is get you can either get a drone flyover, which would be optimal, but you could even just take 3D scans of the ground from satellite imagery and throw that in Unreal and now you have a full-on background that can go on the volume screen or the Studio Lab screen.
Yeah, we can pretty much do that at Studio Lab, actually. Yeah, that's yeah, there's some really cool technology where they can actually build a dynamic 3D environment from stills now, which is amazing, actually. To be able just to take a whole bunch of stills of a place and then you can render it and walk around in it. It's amazing.
You can get an app on your phone that can do it for free.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, so it's true. But, you know, since, of course, at SilmFilm we spare no expense, you know, anyway, one of the places that we were looking for is Nivrim, right? So we've done Doriath, we've done Brethil, we've done Nargothrond, you know, we've done Tolsirion, we've done all of these areas in the past. But Nivrim. So Nivrim, this is the area on the border of Doriath, like where the letter D is, right, that we talked about. This is where Huan meets Luthien, a.k.a. Luthien gets kidnapped by Celegorm and Curufin. You know, depending on how you want to look at that moment, right? So we had a couple different candidates here, right?
Yeah. Yes. So we want it to be an oak forest, and probably the English oak is what Tolkien might have been envisioning, which is very common throughout most of Europe. And so the two examples are both from England. One is Sherwood Forest, which is a mixed wood forest that's predominantly oak. And the other is Wispens Wood, which I believe is in Devonshire. Which they're both old growth, but very different in the types of trees based on the environment. So the Wispens Wood one, there's a lot of boulders covered in moss.
Right.
And the trees are a little scragglier.
Right.
Which might be nice for an edge of a forest, but might not convey the age the way the giant oaks in Sherwood would. So it's kind of a what would you envision for
of those
the edge of Doriath?
Right. I rather like the Sherwood version would be my favorite. Like the large oaks would be the number one thing. Also the now of course again, like we're not far from the river, right? So it's not hard to justify like the prominence of boulders either, you know, like that would fit. But again, I'm just thinking we're not going to be doing a geographic survey here. We're just going to we would be doing a scene with Luthien walking through the forest, and I think the large oaks, like the boulders, it's very striking, right? It makes the whole thing seem very alien, which is kind of fun. Like I could see an argument for that, but I think just something that is sort of a simpler kind of forest look would be sort of better. And I kind of like the idea of the edge of the forest of Doriath looking very like huge old growth oaks that just stop. Seems to me like that would actually kind of work pretty well to kind of, especially since now, as we've said, like exactly where the boundaries of the girdle are is not perfectly clear, but Doriath is by definition, like the whole concept of Doriath is basically the boundaries. Boundaries are important, right? And so having a forest with stark boundaries is something that kind of visually conveys that element without having to say anything, right? So that's kind of what I like about the idea of you're walking through, you know, Sherwood oaks until you come out, you know, into a field, you know, on the other side of them. That I think would convey something important sort of silently there. But yeah. So I'd go for Sherwood. Especially since also, as you say, the especially to people who don't know anything about it, like me, for instance, the big, huge oaks would much more readily and unthinkingly convey the antiquity of the forest. Especially as somebody who's, you know, used to New England forests, which are all young, because New England was almost completely clear-cut by farmers in the 18th century. You know, smaller trees like that would immediately, in my mind, I would visually associate it with a younger forest. So again, just thinking of the nonverbal cues we're giving to people, I think Sherwood would be clearer in that way.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. All right. The Door of Mourning. All right, so we have several sketches to convey concepts here, right?
Yep.
Glad we brought this up, because I was thinking about talking about this, but there wasn't time because there was too much other stuff to talk about. So, all right, so we're thinking about the scale. We're thinking about, all right. There's even a question of, is there a source? Is it a source of light, or is it a dark hole, right?
Right. So obviously what we're trying to convey here is something fairly metaphysical. And so whatever choices we make visually are going to convey certain ideas about this metaphysical concept.
Yes.
And that's why you're given some things to comment on if you're like, no, definitely not that.
Right. Okay.
The images all involve water because Tolkien did describe the shores of the outer sea in relation to this transition. Right. So we were trying to incorporate that in some way. The image on the bottom left is showing the water going out to the horizon meeting the sky. And at that point where they meet, somewhere in the distance, you see a flash of light when the souls pass through. So that was Dylan's concept, and he was suggesting that the souls could maybe pass over the water or pass under the water and then reemerge to go through the door. Yeah. So it would convey the idea of death and passages to the next life and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. I by the way, just as a side note, I know that we're going to be looking at a bunch of things like this. I really love the sort of sketches and concepts that we're getting here. Of course, in many cases, we're not getting finished art, right? We're just getting sort of sketches of ideas. But it's really neat to have some, even though all four of these images are like, sketchy in their own ways, right? They all do a really interesting job of kind of conveying a different sort of visual concept, and it really helps to kind of make speculations about that concrete. Okay. It's funny, Icon, it's funny you mentioned that in the chat here. Picturing the Aslan portal from Prince Caspian. Yes, the Aslan makes a door in the air at the end of Prince Caspian was one of the models, right, that comes immediately to my mind as well here.
Right. So the door on the top there,
the top one is
meant to look vaguely like it could have been from two trees. So that one has most in common with that reference.
So,
sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I say another reference image is from Thor: Love and Thunder. There is eternity. So there is a pool of water with a doorway that's a person shape that you can see stars through. So that's the bottom image there. That was suggested by Steve Angel Eyes to convey how you would be crossing over from worlds. And so we were using other media to try to be like, how do people usually show this?
It's a great question. It's a great way to kind of focus it. All right, so let me back up a step. The beach, right? How wedded are we to beach concept here? Like sand on the edge of water?
Not at all.
Not at all? Okay.
That's simply because that's a starting point when it's like, you have water, so you have the edge of water.
Or unless we don't.
The encircling seas was kind of, I think, the starting point for that.
Right.
Yeah. But we don't need that.
Well, no, I mean, and I'm thinking even of like Tolkien was pretty generous with his use of the word sea, I mean, like Vi, you know, the outer seas, right? The outer, he uses that language constantly, like it's the outer oceans, right? And he's like,
but it's,
and then
it's air,
it's air, right? Exactly. I mean, he'll then come like much later. I could be talking about the oceans of Vi, and then like 4 paragraphs later, this is in the Book of Lost Tales. He's like, Vi, of course, is not in fact water, right? It's, you know, and so it's, yeah. I mean, he is constantly using that. So, I mean, I've always assumed that the encircling seas, like on the other side of Valinor, right? When we're talking about the encircling seas, we're not talking about oceans at all. We're not talking about water, probably at all, at that point.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we couldn't represent it that way. I mean, the very fact that Tolkien uses that metaphor so persistently could mean that that is a good way for us to we could basically avail ourselves visually of that metaphor in order to depict it as if it were, not because we're claiming that there's actually water that surrounds the world, but just as, like, you know, if you're gonna go in your, you know, in your naked Fea, right, in your spirit to this place, that this place would be perceived in some way. I mean, like an ocean lapping up on the shore is a perfectly fine kind of metaphor. I mean, it's the kind of metaphor that Tolkien always used, but it's not literal. Like, it surely isn't exactly what it would look like, you know?
Right. So we wanted to convey boundaries.
Yeah.
See, the only, if you did it literally, right, like we would be just at the edge of the world and it would just fall off into empty space, right, which having a bunch of people milling around right near there might feel a little uncomfortable. Not
to mention having a door into, like, it's one thing to have a door in which you look through and where you're looking through is different from what you're seeing around it, right? But to have like a wall of nothingness, of black nothingness, with a door somehow in the middle of the black nothingness, it's weird. And not to mention the fact is not real inspiring visually, right?
Yeah.
I mean, total void, black void to show on screen can be evocative in some ways, right? I'm thinking, for instance, of the use of black void at the end of the Neverending Story, right? You know,
in the beginning, it is always dark.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, that's a really good use of like that black nothingness. Right?
We are using that here in the Halls of Mandos for sure. Right. Also, Stranger Things makes use of it with 11, whenever 11 is kind of like astrally projecting herself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. Oh, and the it's not black void, but the Matrix, the
it's more of a white void there.
Right. But it's still, for all intents and purposes, it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we trying to lean more towards void with some form of light or darkness in it that is going to be not really a gateway, but maybe a pulsing burst of either, again, light or darkness or tendrils coming out that you could go through? Or are we looking to convey an actual portal that someone passes through? So therefore we maybe want some distance from the viewer to the portal, so you're not like standing right next to it while people are walking through it, so it's
right. So here's another issue, it seems to me, is that there are 2 different doors. Now, I don't know that we will necessarily have an occasion to depict the other door. Right.
The door
that is the door of night, through which Morgoth is going to be
for another few seasons for sure.
Exactly. But again, like,
but maybe not never. Yeah.
Maybe not never. And I think it's really important for us to prevent confusion between door number 1 and door number 2, right? What we certainly don't want anyone to watch this and think is that all of these souls are being thrust out into outer darkness, right? Are, just being pushed off into the void.
Right. But it's still supposed to be unknown on the other side.
Unknown, yes.
So that tension of what is through the doorway, we don't want to answer that in any way.
Yeah. No, exactly. Agreed.
Which is why I would kind of prefer to keep this on a beach so that the door of night, if we do portray it, would be on the edge of the world with
further
just
away.
the void of space beyond it. And
no, and that's, I don't want to get too derailed into imagining exactly what the door of night should look like.
Yeah,
I'm just observing that we want to make sure that they're different, right?
Sure.
So the number one thing I think is that we want to convey that whatever it is on the, and I agree, Marie, we can't, like, no spoilers, right? We're not going to get a glimpse of the landscape or something. What we want to show is that there is something there, that they're not being, but so, and that
not
could be
pure darkness,
not pure darkness. Exactly.
Right.
For this reason, I think we want to avoid, it's kind of, I have to admit that of these four image concepts here, the one I was most immediately drawn to is the bottom middle with the darkness, right? Because of the contrast, right? To show really, really clearly this is a door that goes somewhere else, right? However, what I don't like about, I mean, I kind of like the stars, but what I don't like about it is the suggestion that you're going into a void. You're going into, like in that case, it looks like you're going to the emptiness of space, right? Which is not the case. We want to show that there's, so I think therefore light, not only it being, like a white thing that shows, but like looking as if sunlight is shining through from the other side, essentially. Something like a quality of light which conveys there's something over there, right? You are in fact going towards something. Now, like, walk towards the light just makes it, I mean, I was going to say makes it look like the afterlife, which in fairness it is. So maybe that's not a bad thing, in fact, but yeah, if there were, I would want to convey something positive, like, again, something existent on the other side, like to convey that it's definitely a place. It's a portal to a place, even if we don't give any real glimpse of it. I would even be willing to go as far as showing, like, if we're looking at it at an angle we can't see through, right? We don't get any prospect of what it is. But if we're looking at it from an angle and you can see, like, a little bit of grassy ground or something, right? Like, I wouldn't even be opposed to something like that. Again, to indicate it's a country. It's a place over there. We don't know where. We don't know what's there. We don't know what happens there. But it's not, again, you're not going into the void.
Stepping off into emptiness, yeah.
That might be too far, but I said I'd be willing to go even that far, perhaps, or at least to consider going that far, in order to make sure that we're not conveying the idea that they're just getting sucked into the void.
Yeah, I probably would be happier with the quality of light being like sunlight and bright and good light coming through the portal into the space that the souls are in, especially if they're in a gray, murky, misty area. Having the light of day clearly be through that might tell us what we need to know. I would hesitate to put grassy ground on the other side. Like, I'm like, there's something very,
it's a little too
clear,
definite.
But it's just, it would be almost disappointing. Like, it's just more of the same. Like, I know what grass looks like.
Right. Like, and like, as if you're looking at soils that there might be worms tunneling through right on the other side of the mystic portal is a bit of a letdown. I hear that. Agreed. That sense of conveying a sense of that which is on the other side of the portal is, like, if anything, more real than the land where the shades are that they're leaving. Especially given how very Homeric we made the land of shades that they're staying in. That sense of passing from the shadow to the reality would be in keeping with the kind of Homeric conception that we were invoking frequently through the episode. Oh, hang on, I think you're muted. Yeah.
We would also be kind of telling the audience what we think is there.
Right.
I mean, which I mean, I think I know what's through that door, but
Right.
But
Right.
like we're
Right.
very clearly, and the dialogue makes that clear. Like we don't know what's over there. It could be
Right.
anything.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Agreed.
Evan suggests, why can't the door be closed? It's Luthien who's seeing it. I guess, but like I'm not really thrilled about the idea of a mechanical opening.
Right. Yeah. And also, we are going to see some souls passing through it, right?
So it would be open while they pass through anyway. But yeah, the concept of it being permanently open and then the souls just pass through, I think feels better to me than something that opens and closes.
Right. Especially, especially
it's
with
like the Star Trek doors. You hear the every time it opens.
Right. Well, no, because, I mean, that's an important sort of symbolic statement, right? To say that the doors are sometimes open and sometimes closed, like you're sometimes
that
welcome
means
to come through the door. It means a lot, really.
Yeah.
And what fits with the kind of metaphysical situation that we've discussed there is that it's a constant invitation to the humans who have died and been, processed.
More than just an invitation, a summons.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. The door is always standing open. And that's another thing, that the summons element of it is another reason why I think the like radiant light shining through it, like, it's reaching out to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a passive, it's not just a, like an orifice that you go through. It's reaching out to you.
Right. Yeah. It's not something that you just see on the other side. Yeah. Whatever's there leaks through the door.
So every once in a while, one of Cthulhu's tentacles just flicks out and grabs someone and pulls them back in.
That would say something else.
That would say something.
It would say something.
Let's not say that. Let's not say that thing.
Yeah. So now, but this. So but as far as like what the actual portal looks like, I haven't gotten too much closer to that.
Yeah, I'm like, say, which of these questions have you answered? Light. Okay, good.
Light. We've answered light. And so by the way, I'm okay with beach, with like quasi metaphorical beach, right? Mm-hmm. But what I'm imagining visually is instead, like, if you're standing on this quasi metaphorical beach and you're looking out across the outer sea, it shouldn't look like water to the horizon. There shouldn't be a horizon, right? Like, there should be like this sort of nebulous middle ground where, what seems to be water vanish. Also, no waves.
Very
still.
It's
not an ocean.
That's
right.
That's more or less how I was thinking.
So yeah,
of it.
the two bottom left images are much more. This is not an ocean. This is still water.
Yes. So like still water. So that by itself, like if it's a beach that looks like an ocean beach, but the water is still, right? Even more still than a lake. And so therefore, like the perfectly still water that kind of like becomes indistinct, into like the darkness, and you're not sure what's out there or if anything is out there. That would seem to me to kind of convey both the concept of, the surrounding seas, and also, but to be doing it within the sort of metaphorical framework that Tolkien persistently used about it.
Yeah. So if we keep the space where the souls are fairly dark, because it's the edge of the world and all this, and it's more of like a twilight place, you can't see very far in twilight. So the water just going beyond your vision and you don't see what's out there. It's just dark. That fits. And then the portal itself would be brighter light than any of the surroundings, so it would stand out in that way.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the portal, I would lean towards no architecture.
Okay. That was the other part, is should there be something that the Valar have built around this portal?
I think no.
Okay.
I think no. I think it's... I would lean towards something like an arch. Like something which does not look like it was built by hands. Right? I mean, this is, Iluvatar has placed here a portal to this other place. And even the Valar themselves don't really know what's over there, necessarily. Right? At least they don't have a clear vision of what's over there. And in order to convey that this is just Iluvatar's intervention, that's not to say Iluvatar isn't capable of making a perfectly good post and lintel structure if he wanted to, but if he did, he would be doing it in a particular architectural style, which would seem to place it within one of the, even to make it look like it fits in Valinor would make it a Valinorian door, and it's not a Valinorian door. It's not a door that belongs anywhere in that way.
So what you're kind of looking for is it to feel a little bit like the obelisk in 2001: A Space Odyssey, just less square, obviously, but something like that just is there.
A thing that's there, yeah, and even like a kind of a two-dimensional shape, like opening through, not like a ragged rent in the fabric of time and space, right? Because I think it would be regular,
stable and
appealing look. Yeah, it would be. It would look like it were made on purpose.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
This is gonna be fun.
Yeah,
what did the Good Place door look like? Because we're describing the door in the Good Place.
I don't know that, actually.
Basically,
which door?
At the very end, the door that they're going through into non-existence.
Yeah. So Brian, I hear you about the possibility of it's being a cop-out to avoid giving an architecture, but how could this door possibly be too metaphysical? If there's anything that is metaphysical to the extreme, it's this door, isn't it? I mean, is there anything in Arda that's more purely metaphysical than this door? I can't even think of a candidate for such a thing. You know what I mean? This is a purely metaphysical entity in that way. But it is real, Brian. It's like you're seeing it. It's real.
Yeah. It's just being metaphysical does not make it not real.
No, it doesn't make it. I mean, and it doesn't have to be built with artist stuff, like rock or wood or whatever, in order for it to be real.
Okay. The Good Place actually just has it's actually part of the landscape. This is actually closer akin to the door that Aslan opens up in Prince Caspian. And it looks like there's no... you can just see the forest that you're standing in behind it. So it doesn't... Yeah, okay. So that's not...
Right.
What I was
but
thinking
even
at all.
But see, Brian, again, here's the problem. Even if it's made of anything, it's not even just the substance of which it's made that I think is an issue. If it's got a it's exactly culturally specific artistry that I find myself wanting to resist, essentially. Or because if it has artistry, if there's a structure of some kind, whatever it's made of, maybe it's made of some alien substance that doesn't look like anything else, but even if it's made of anything, it's going to be made in a particular style. And that style will either be like one of the other styles of the people of Arda, or it will be unlike any of them. And I don't like what either one of those things says.
All right. Well, what if it's like a natural arch? I'm not saying we have to make it out of rock, but the shape of a natural arch is the rock just is that way, and it makes an arch. Because if it weren't that way, it would fall down. Like the arch shape is structural, but not built.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're going to have light shining through it, that's all you're going to see. I mean, it's going to be like an aperture through which light is coming. We would have to go a little bit out of our way to erect a structure around the light and make that visible. And I'm just arguing that we don't go out of our way in that way.
Okay. But there can still be some kind of aperture.
It's surrounded by a quantum filament. That is what maintains the structure of the door.
Oh boy.
No, metaphysical, not fake science.
Same thing.
Right.
Same thing.
Yeah. I mean, this is the whole like death passing to another form of life thing. Like there's probably certain images that convey that more than others, but I'm also pretty sure you're not saying that you want it to look like a birth canal either. So,
no,
yeah,
not
so I'm
saying
like,
that.
so yeah, I'm like, so you want it metaphysical, but not too natural and not too built, and I'm like, well, what is it made of then?
It's not made of anything. Like it would, just an aperture. Yeah,
okay.
Light. I mean, it certainly looked like it was made of light.
Okay, so we have to design this as if you're in an architecture class and they're like, don't worry about the building, just design the negative space.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that if you looked at it from the side, you would see nothing. You'd just see light emerging.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't think it has to have any depth at all.
Okay, hang on. How about see if that's gonna be all right. Hang on, I got something. I got a thing.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it sounds kind of like this is what you're. Oh wow! I didn't even see this actual physical door there when I was looking at the image.
That's okay, right? Yeah, imagining the physical door isn't there.
Right.
Yeah,
like that's
close to. I mean,
light coming through.
If you have a doorway with light coming through, now this is looks like white indoor light. If it were like sunlight coming through, it would have an even stronger effect, I think, because this is a little bit more of a glow, right? But yeah, the point is, Nick, the fact that you overlook the door that's standing open next to it, is exactly what I'm talking about. Like that's all you're going to see is the light, the opening. Right, the opening with light.
All right, so an aperture through which light is coming in some shape, probably not rectangular, but a shape.
I think not rectangular. Arch seems, because of the as you say, like the sort of the way in which that's a natural structure seems. That's what I was picturing, like a an arch.
So, all right, so that makes sense. And then water that is still going out to a indistinct horizon that you cannot see, where the horizon overtakes the water very clearly because it's too dark and misty.
Yep.
How do the souls approach the door? Do they pass over the water? Do they go through the water? Do they step on stones to cross the water?
Wait, where is it? Is it on the water or is it not?
Yeah, is it on the water or is it on the land?
I don't think it's on the water.
Okay. So the water is behind the door.
Yes. So again, what we want to convey that they're leaving the world, but we don't want it to look like they're going off into the void. Right. Again, this is where I want to differentiate from, not just stylistically, but from the Gate of Night, right? The Gate of Night is like, here endeth the world and beyond is void, right? That's not, and I want to make sure we don't convey that here, right? So if it's like, there's the edge of the beach, right? There's the beach and there's the water. And if the door is like right at the where the water and you can see the water, I would want you to be able to see stuff behind the door, right? So again, that it's clear you've not come to the edge of all things, and you're passing through into the. Because again, not only do I want this to not look like they're going out into outer darkness, I equally don't want it to look like Morgoth's going to be pushed through into wherever this is, right? I mean, like it needs to be a clear, and that one is a boundary, right? The Door of Night is meant to be. Here is the edge of Arda, and beyond is void, right? And that's just not at all what's happening with this door. I mean, again, that's cool. So again, we still have the opening flap, which no opening flap.
It's hard to find exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. But just an aperture through which light is coming, and if it's
You know what I really like about this idea is that it suggests that our three-dimensional world is two-dimensional
compared
to what's
with
on
the
other
other.
side of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
I think that's really interesting. Currently as written, the description is that they're walking into water that's like up to their ankles.
Okay.
And passing through the door. Which we don't have to have that, just, but I don't think that really violates what you're
No, again,
unless you really want that hard line of going from the beach to the water to be the crossing of the boundary.
No, even that perhaps overdoes it in some ways, but
Yeah.
Again, I think
But
the
water goes past the door is the key.
Water goes past it. The point is, this is not the boundary of Arda. This is an
Right.
aperture made within Arda. This is a gateway between Arda and this other place, and
It's a wormhole.
It's a worm, and it doesn't. There's a sense in which Illiver's not going to put this anywhere, right? He put it here for good reasons. Like he's got his good reasons for putting it here, right?
Yeah.
But he could have opened this door, like
It doesn't
by
have to
Cuiviénen
be on
if
the
he
boundary.
wanted to. Yeah, it doesn't have to be in
Right.
the boundary. I mean, if you think about it, this is the door of morning. The other one is the door of night. The other one that we're not thinking about, except by contrast, is the door of night, right? So, and those are not on the opposite sides of Arda from each other, as one might think, right? They're like relative, in a sense, they're relatively close to each other, right? Which, little odd in some ways, right? But it's fine. But we still have to convey that concept, that there is a sense in which this door is the opposite of the other door, right? You're not going through the boundary into nothingness. You are doing something almost opposite of that. And that's just why I think it's really important that we would conceive this in a way that would prevent any possibility of confusing the two in either direction. Either to think this is what's going, this is the void, or that the other one is that Morgoth is, going to,
Hang out with the humans.
right.
Yeah.
Like, to a little reunion with Hurin and
Yeah.
Morrowind on the other side.
We don't want to convey
right?
that.
No, we don't want to convey that.
All right. I think that's enough stipulation of what you want it to look like, that we could come up with better concept art next time.
Yeah. No, it's very, very helpful. Like all these things are very, very helpful. And of course, I know that, like concept art that, manages to show you exactly what you want things not to look like that's not a glamorous kind of concept
helpful.
art accomplishment, but it's super helpful. Yeah, it's super helpful. And
There you go, Nick. Just turn it into an arch and we're good.
Turn into an arch, and that's of course, the other reference that we haven't made yet, that for some reason that makes me think of even more, is the Truman Show.
Right.
The door at the edge of the horizon.
Yes.
There's, and again, in a sense, that's more like what I think it's important that we not. This is one reason why, so Nick, the reason this makes me think of it is seeing the sort of sky and vague horizon behind that door. Hang on.
You're
you got
muted.
your sound again.
Trying to avoid people having to hear me creak my chair. This kind of makes it feel like the sky is being projected onto a wall.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem correct.
Yeah. Which is, I think, another reason why it made me think of the Truman Show. But
yeah.
So
Right. That's what you need to get the water in there to create a sense of distance that would. Yeah.
How weird would it be to orient the door differently? That is, instead of walking, to not be, how weird would it be to not be facing west when you pass through the door?
Weird.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of you have to go west if you're human.
But again, like
I know it could be any direction at all.
It could be any direction at all. But not only and I get it. Like I acknowledge that it's weird. It's like how weird. Like because
well, but
or
again,
is it a good weird or bad weird? Because westward facing on the horizon, it still looks like the edge, right?
Right, which is why you've mentioned several times about what would the door look like from the side. So we would want the camera or the character's point of view to not be facing the door head on, but to be coming at this from an angle to see
especially Luthien,
sideways.
Who's not going through it, right? So Luthien is an onlooker on this thing. So having her point of view be angular, possibly steeply angular, right? Especially since she's focused more on the humans going through, so she could almost be around the side of it, watching, like with the door on her shoulder, right? Watching the humans come towards her, almost, right?
The camera will almost certainly at times not be viewing the door edge like straight on.
Right.
We will get a sense of. There's no question that we will get a sense of whether or not this door has depth.
Right.
And if it doesn't, then that's fine. But we'll be able to see that, and that camera is going to move, so it's not going to have. It's not going to have this effect.
Yes.
I got to remirror my thing. I unmirrored it because I had text on my background for a minute.
Yeah. That's
No.
Okay. So are we good with the door?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Yay, we got through 2 slides.
2 slides. I'm moving along. I am so moving along
hey,
now.
The night is young. It's only 11:18.
That is young. But we have a lot more to talk about. I know. I'm gonna go through others quicker. But that was a particularly important big issue. So
metaphysical questions are difficult.
Okay, so Katrin did a drawing here of Tol Sirion. Now the Isle. So here's what Luthien and Huan showing up. So one question that this raises in my mind is how did we talk about how we want to convey the difference between Tol Sirion and Tol and Garhoth?
A little bit. The idea was that the evil in the basement needs to pervasively creep through the whole building in some way. So there would be some indication looking at the structure that it is different. And I know we talked about a few different things.
Right.
Using light, using like a layer of grime over everything. That the walls would look different with new management.
Right. Yes.
So she's kind of like lit it from below a little bit to kind of show that effect, right?
It gives it that vague, like shopping mall in Russia feeling.
That feeling's a little vague for me. But yeah.
There'd be something subtle. Like it still looks like the same building.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's change up the lighting a little bit.
It's not been under new management for so very long, right?
Right.
There won't have been architectural alterations.
Having it being lit from below by like orcish torchlight seems a good move versus it kind of having its almost its own light, and only being and other than that only being lit from above by moonlight at night.
So and we can do more showing it from night scenes and less day scenes, right? Like we can play with the time of day, so it's like, oh, it's evil now. It's at nighttime. Right.
Well, and of course it raises the I mean, as Icon here was raising, the obvious, parallel is Minas Morgul, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as both in the sense of stronghold of the good guys now occupied by and corrupted, as well as the whole
undead,
light welling up from in between.
What happens if you put evil green light in?
Yeah, exactly. So
everybody knows undead is green.
Yeah. So the question becomes then, to what extent we could kind of lean into the parallel, because there's a lot to like about the parallel in some ways, right? I don't know that we need to resist it, but to what extent do we want to resist that parallel, and in what ways would we, would that resistance be manifested exactly?
The green is probably something to resist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with leaning into fire, like whether from torches or other fires. Um, some other way to make the light look sickly and ugly and not what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But I think green is a step too far.
So maybe like a sooty red or something?
Maybe, yeah.
Isn't purple undead because of Warcraft, Brian?
In Lotro they do a lot of purple flames in evil places in general, but undead places frequently. So it's not an unknown association. I think also, of course, of the blue flames in Dracula, which
blue flame
have an indirect. It's not really an undead thing in Dracula, but
it's weird.
Yeah. Anyway, so okay, but we're definitely looking at primarily illumination rather than architectural changes.
Right. Yeah. It was
so it should
take the
still
same
very
set,
much look like
change the lighting, change some of the decor, but not the structure.
Okay.
Yeah. More bats.
More bats. More bats. Exactly. Yep. That's good. That's good.
That's my Swedish metal band name.
More bats.
More bats. With
more
two
bats.
A's.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Does everybody get to choose a Swedish metal band name?
Brian did earlier.
Okay. So, that's good. That's good. All right. What was his? Dorwar? Wasn't that it?
Yeah, Dorwar. Yeah.
Dorwar. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're getting atmospheric artwork for Angband. The mushrooms. I know the mushrooms feature in the plot.
In the episode,
it's this one in the episode, right? Isn't this?
Yes.
Yes.
So long ago, I'm like questioning whether it was this season or not. But yes, it was in this season. The mushrooms.
Yes, it was episode 10 of this season. Yes.
It wasn't even that long ago. Okay. All right. So we've got. So the two things that I find most striking about some of the concepts here, three things I find most striking. One is mushrooms. Again, there's a lot of mushrooms going on here. That is, it suggests a prominence of growth, which again is kind of interesting in the context of the episode, as to like the uncertainty of the elves as to whether or not that's a good thing, right, or not. There's a way in which mushrooms could sort of visually represent the kind of growth of evil, right? And
corruption.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that Diriel points out in the episode, though, that I think is really, really cool, and a lot of people don't really know this about mushrooms, is the fact that they take toxins and poisons and even radiation out of the soil and turn it into food for other plants. And it's used in the episode as kind of an image, as an image of the resistance against Morgoth, taking this really rotten situation, and it's a picture of Iluvatar working right there in Angband, working against Morgoth.
Right. Even though through the very thing that the elves at first think is just an evidence of corruption, right? Flourishing corruption, right? Yeah. No, okay. So anyway, so I think I like there being a bunch of mushrooms, but that was, for these reasons, but that was interesting. The second thing that I'm interested by is the idea of like wooden bridges of that kind. Let me come back to that. The third thing that I'm interested in is what looks like evidence of ruins here.
Yeah, I was looking
which
at
I
that.
found really striking. It's not that I think that's impossible by any stretch, right? That there could be evidence that I think it's okay if Angband does not look completely intact. I hadn't thought of that, but that's that's what I found so interesting about that image.
I mean, it is inside a volcano.
Well,
not
exactly.
only that, it was damaged, at least exteriorly, during the War of the Powers.
Yeah.
And it's been rebuilt since then.
Right.
Yes.
And lots of orcs and captives have been living there for hundreds of years now.
This is post Sauron management Angband.
Right. So basically the question is, the culture of Angband, would it be the type of place where stuff that crumbles and falls apart is just left lying there? Or would they reuse it and recycle it to do something else so it would get all cleaned up and there wouldn't be any evidence of that? So it's more of a culture of Angband question.
I strongly favor the first, that is things left.
The wasteful.
And the reason is contrast with what we did with Autumno in season 1 to show the degradation and the decline of Morgoth over time.
Right. So I thought we were far enough along that we could have that, but I was just wanting to make sure that you're not like, Angband is at peak efficiency now. There's no way they'd have this derelict.
Not necessarily, but
And Autumno is all about this unity of vision that, there's no way that anything would ever happen in Autumno that Morgoth had not put his stamp of approval on. Whereas here, that's not the case. There's conflict between his lieutenants. There's things going on that he doesn't even care enough about how people are getting around in here. He doesn't care about his infrastructure. That's being done piecemeal by other people.
And that brings me back to the wooden bridges, which presumably which would manifestly not be part of the original design, and so therefore it would suggest, I would think, that orcs would have had to build them. I mean, or make slaves build them, of course. But anyway, they would be like a kind of, shortcut that's been put into place by the residents out of necessity, right? Thus showing that the original design has sort of failed and has had to be worked around in various ways. So, that all works. Anyway, fascinating little items from that sketch here. Okay, props. So we're thinking about stuff. All right, so Luthien, spindle, and distaff. All right, help me with this, Marie. What are we seeing here?
Okay, so this is from the scene where Luthien cuts her hair and then weaves it into her magic cloak, right?
Yeah.
So this is all happening in the treehouse, and there's a bunch of steps in that process. We wanted to show some of it to show the magic inherent in Luthien relating to arts of spinning and weaving and all of that sort of thing. That was a decision made in the magic discussion some time ago. So there's been some suggestions on how to show that and what would be different about her process if she's, one, doing this magically, and two, doing this in a treehouse.
Right.
So some of the images here are some sketches to show what her work would look like, and then what Adola has done is create a 3D image of what the spindle and distaff look like. So that's what the links are. Is you can click and it rotates, and you can see the 3D. Like if you're going to 3D print something, it shows you that image.
Cool. So I have to admit, I know so little about spindles and distaffs that I don't even really know what I'm looking at here.
All right. So what you're doing is you're taking fibers, like hair,
they might be very long hairs, right?
Sure. Say, for instance, and you are spinning them together to make a yarn out of them, essentially, right? And then you're going to use the yarn in the loom to weave it together to make cloth. So you have to first turn the hair into thread or yarn,
and that's what the spindle's for.
Yeah, and then the loom is to weave it to turn it into cloth.
Right.
So
And
we're
the
not
distaff
gonna.
is involved in the loom.
No. That's with the
No.
spindle too. Spindle and
That's
distaff
what
go together.
they go
Yeah,
together.
So if you see in the sketch there, she's sitting on the branch, and she's
Yeah.
holding in her right hand something that she's holding down a
Yeah.
little bit, and then there's a thread that's connecting up to something she's holding in her left hand.
Her left
That's
hand
kind
is
of,
the ball that's being.
yeah, it looks like a ball of yarn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the image that's on the bottom left corner should be the distaff, which is what she's holding in that left upper hand where she's weaving, collecting her ball of
So
yarn.
that's what you collect the ball of yarn on.
Right. And then
Okay.
the spindle is using, well, a drop spindle uses gravity to pull down to, as it drops, it spins the threads together to make the yarn. I hope that wasn't too oversimplified. I'm sorry.
No, I no.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if anything, it's not simplified enough for me. So no, I get it. I mean, I don't get it. No, this is great. So first
The
of all,
point
like,
is she's doing this thing with her
no, she's
hand,
doing the thing.
and
I get it. And I look, no,
she's
if I
making a
can,
thing.
if I can come out of this actually for the first time in my life understanding what a distaff is, that would be like marvelous. Because that's one of those words that I've read all my life and I have never known what it actually was.
So as you're
So,
spinning the thread,
yeah.
you've got to collect it. You don't
Right.
want, so you need to keep tension too.
Yeah, right.
So that's why you're winding it up on something else. So
And
you're
it's the
making a
distaff
ball
that
of
you're
yarn.
winding
So the
up
distaff
on.
is so you can wind up your ball of yarn and keep your tension in your thread and keep
Right.
it with the way you're trying to do it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So the fancy bits at the top of the distaff, the bird and the branches and such in this model.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What is that, like, decoratively so it's the shaft beneath that she'd be wrapping the thread around?
Right. So you want to keep everything contained there, and so it's inside that, and you want to draw out your thread.
Okay, so you're drawing up the thread from the spindle and you're winding it around the distaff.
Am I doing this right? I don't actually weave, so
Yeah. No,
I've carded wool. That's my connection to this process.
Yeah, I've had indirect connections with wool.
It makes more sense if
sheep
you just
and
watch
wool as well, but
yeah, if you just watch a video of someone doing it, it's like, oh, that's what they're doing. Yeah.
okay. All right.
So yeah, you need to take fluffy bits of stuff with wool and do it. But you can also obviously do silk. Hair is a little harder, but Luthien's magic.
So she would have made her spindle and distaff out of wood?
These would be things she would have already owned, and that maybe Dairon is delivering to her in her treehouse. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, these are
as opposed to them hoisting a loom up the tree to her.
Right. We decided
but they could
to
easily
skip that step.
Right.
She's using the tree branches for the loom, so that's what you see in the other image there.
Right.
Yeah, and
right.
honestly, Katrin did do a storyboard of parts of the scene, so you can see Luthien in action later.
Right.
I'm sorry, I should not be the person explaining this.
You're so much better qualified than I to explain this.
Yeah, no, that's not. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. So we do have to have somebody hand her a spindle. Does she explain what she needs a spindle for? Dairon is feeling too guilty to ask.
Right. It's more the, can I have my thing? And he brings it to her, presuming that she's just gonna, work on.
Because what she's definitely not going to do is weave her hair into a magical cloak that's going to cause other people to sleep. That's definitely
who would do
not.
that? Yeah.
Why would?
So that's not on his mind. So she requested the item. It's kind of like if someone says, "Hey, can you bring me a book to read in my imprisonment?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Sure, here's your book." So it's like, "Hey, can you bring me my stuff that I do for my weaving?" Okay, here, have your.
Yeah, they
stuff.
they don't know that you're gonna hide a rock hammer inside the book.
Right.
Exactly. They don't know that you're planning to use the book as a hammer, basically. Okay. All right. Gotcha. I think I'm following. I do like the designs though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one thing that I would say, if she made leaves at the top, would they be beech leaves? It would be. It's a beech sapling that she's modeling it after.
Yes. So
So as to thematically convey to the tree what she's talking about, the whole,
yeah.
yeah.
So if you look at an image of a beech sapling, it has the large leaf and then the smaller leaves. So that shape with the large two leaves on the side is indicative of a beech sapling. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Nice. Love it.
I guess I could have put that picture on the page too. I maybe missed that picture.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. The Nauglamir. Okay. So, the choices for the Nauglamir, right? On the one hand, the Nauglamir is the largest concentrated chunk of bling in all of Beleriand. Right? More gems placed into the Nauglamir than you'll see in one place anywhere on the continent. So it has to be a fairly thick and complicated piece. It can't be like a string, right? So when it's a neck, even though it's
this is not a necklace, this is a carcanet.
It's a carcanet, yeah, right, exactly. Notice how I just agreed with that as if I knew exactly what that means. I kind of know what that means, but I don't know that I would have picked a carcanet out of a lineup successfully. It's like the thing that goes around your neck,
collary style
collary
thing.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for stooping to my lower levels of understanding. Right, so a more collary type thing.
Not a jeweler either. It's definitely not the expert on any of these topics.
It's just it's however the extent to which your knowledge exceeds mine is still very striking. So okay, so in Katrin's image on the left here, we have she's thinking more in terms of, this is almost more like and again I don't have the words for this, almost like what you see in like a Lord Chancellor's thing, like one of those sort of chains of office that goes around like the shoulders and comes down like like the sort of thing that Cardinal Wolsey wore, right?
Sure.
With the chain of S's, right, and the Tudor rose. Anyway, that again, I have no vocabulary for this, but like that kind of a big old shoulder necklace kind of thing. That seems to be the kind of thing, though, with multiple strands there that Catherine is sort of suggesting, right? That it's not just a collary thing, but a sort of larger framework that lies over the whole breast and shoulders.
Yes. I'm not 100% sure how much of the background of that is part of the necklace or part of the robe. Like since it's not my artwork, I don't know if the gold part is gold or if it is cloth.
Right.
But yeah, it does look draped over the chest. Yeah.
It looks like it. It looks like it. And again, I find that I mean, I assume like that all those like white beady things, and again, I apologize for the crudity of my own vocabulary.
You can say beads, yes.
Right. Well, but they're not beads; they'd be gems, right?
There you go. Gems.
So like, those would all be different gems, right? So presumably, this is in order to sort of showcase the gems. And here it looks like, I think the whole business, right, from the collar stuff down through the stuff that's draped across the shoulders, is all part of the whole one big shebang there, right? Yeah. That's interestingly complicated. I kind of like it. Kind of covers all the things.
Now, one thing we had talked about was kind of making it asymmetrical so that the Silmaril would kind of eventually, like, it's not made to accept a Silmaril, but it will eventually hold it. And if I recall, we had talked about using the shape of the sickle of the Valar for that, because you can kind of get that curve and then the bowl, and the Silmaril can go under the curve of the handle.
Yes. So in the image on the right, there are some light blue circles thrown in there to be like more gems, and those are meant to be in that shape. Roughly.
Okay.
I gotcha.
So
I see it.
Yeah. I maybe should have picked a color that wasn't light blue, but the idea being that if it was a scattering of stones to start with, you could put a Silmaril anywhere.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is one of the things that we would want to consider is, obviously, yeah, the dwarves are not going to originally make something with a big hole in it awaiting a Silmaril, right? And yet, we do have to imagine how it could be remade with the Silmaril, prominently set within it. That's going to sort of affect the rest of it. The thing that I like about Catherine's design is I like the sort of extravagance of it, right? Not just having, what I mean is, it's one thing actually that it's one of the things that I never, like, I don't have enough experience in any of I don't know enough about jewelry to be able to understand what makes the when dwarves look at the Nauglamir and they're like, dude, that is the best. That is the greatest work of the jeweler's art that's ever, like, what makes it the greatest work of the jeweler's art? And so the one thing that I kind of had conceptually in my head was that on the one hand, it's very beautiful because of all of the Valinorian gems, right? So, like, it's made of really excellent raw materials, right? You start with a whole big old pile of Valinorian gems. So on the one hand, but the dwarves aren't looking at it saying, wow, those gems are sweet, right? They're looking at it and saying, this is amazing craftsmanship, right? So merely like a network of settings for cool gems that are just kind of strung together seemed inadequate. And again, that's what I like about Catherine's ideas, that it's not only the execution of that, right, but even like the concept, like how do you take, when you have a big huge pile of jewels, how do you put them together in a way that's going to be really, really attractive, and striking.
Part of what makes the Nauglamir special is that it doesn't sit heavy on the wearer, right? Yeah. And her design is very balanced over the shoulders,
right?
So it would feel less heavy than a very forward heavy necklace would,
right?
So that idea of bringing everything back to here would fit the description that we have.
Yeah, and also the idea of the Silmaril upon her breast, right? Is it's not just like a pendant Silmaril or something like that,
Yeah, it needs to be centered kind of thing.
So no, I mean, I think it is. I hadn't ever thought of something as kind of complicated as that. It's with many different parts. Not just kind of necklacey, if you see what I mean. Again, not just a big old fat honking necklace,
Right. Yeah. So to make everything stay spaced that way would require some decently good chain work and such. Right. So that would be demonstrating skill as well.
And then the whole thing could be kind of patterned in interesting ways, and especially if you have like she has the ornate, metalwork around the neck as well. Again, which would be designed to kind of catch the gems and show them off in certain ways, which could then be amplified by the effect of the Silmaril being in the midst. And anyway, yeah, it's a fascinating concept. I wouldn't have thought of something like that. For the record, it does look like there's cloth under there. The gold, I think, is cloth. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating idea. But yeah, something like almost architectural, if you see what I mean, you know, and not just big, fat, fancy necklace, you know.
Sure.
Yeah. Cool. I do like the Sickle of the Valar reference, though. I think that's a lot of fun.
And you can design it into a more repeating pattern and just have different color gems be that design, essentially, too. So that can offset it.
This is a fascinating Ring of Barahir. It's very... First of all, the entwining snakes in that direction is a really good... So it just looks like a snake braid right around the edge of the ring. Is kind of... That's fun. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I believe we showed you an example last time that did not have any entwining, and you're like, there needs to be more entwining of the
entwining,
snakes. Like,
right? Yeah.
May I show you Katrin's sample?
Yeah. Also, the entwining seems a really important element in the description of the ring. The strangest part of the ring is the like upholding and devouring part. That's the part I think that makes it so hard to envision, right? And I have to say, this is very low key on the devouring front, right?
Sure.
But I'm not sure I dislike that. Like, I'm not sure the Ring of Barahir is supposed to look like, you know, like this snake, right? Like,
yeah, it's this tall.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
You can't take it anywhere.
Exactly. Imagine putting, you know, latex gloves over that puppy. But anyway, it's, yeah. So, but you can see, so on the one hand, you can see the tooth, right? I think maybe it's still a hair underplayed in terms of the devouring, because I don't think if you didn't know about the devouring, you wouldn't guess that anybody was devouring anything here.
So you just want, maybe a little bit of an open mouth going towards that flower.
Just a touch more mouth, yeah. Maybe a little lower jaw action somewhere, I'm not sure, but you could actually have an almost like totally unhinged lower jaw, which almost becomes part of the frame there, Right. So if just there were like a clearly gaping mouth, it wouldn't even have to be in touch with the flowers in order to, but that would still be more devoury. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So slightly more devouring, but otherwise
just a little heavier on the devouring. But I do like. This is my favorite. My favorite entwining snakes idea, not least because it doesn't look like the Ouroboros, which is good. Like, I don't think the description of the Ring of Barahir makes it kind of sound like the Ouroboros, right?
Right, because you got one devouring, you're like, and they're going like.
So I know I always kind of pictured that. Like, that's kind of the image that I had in my head, was the idea of the Ouroboros, but that's not really what he's describing. And so doing the entwining, this is my favorite version of entwining snakes, and with them the two of them interacting with the flowers in this way. Like it's almost, and it's a really low profile ring, like literally low profile on your hand, which does seem, again, I don't think it's going to be a big clunky, honkin' chunk of ring on your finger necessarily. So yeah, I like that. I like the fact that it's a lower profile ring. Cool. Good. So excellent. Let's keep going because we got lots of stuff to cover.
So,
okay.
warning.
Yes.
Next slide has spiders.
Oh yes. Trigger warning. But they're sketches of spiders. These are concept sketches of spiders. Okay. Spider concepts. So this is for our time in Nen Dungortheb, right?
Right.
We want, I think, don't we want the predecessors of, we want something a little more, not totally like orbital spiders, right? But something closer to that, right? We want web slinging spiders, not tarantula-looking spiders.
Right. We vetoed the concept of a tarantula as a model of like Shelob or whatever. So
Yeah, exactly. So I orbital spiders. That's not exactly what I mean. You know what I mean? Like the
ones that weave. Yes.
They're ones that weave webs. There's a word.
So
for that.
we've discovered that weaving is not your topic.
Weaving is not my topic. I have no idea.
Spiders, looms. It's
exactly.
all a mystery.
That's right. Yeah. Arachne, I am not. But
that's fair.
But we're not talking about like spindly leg Black Widow spiders either necessarily. So something a little bit more, a little meatier than that. But we're going to be looking for not only the peers of Shelob. Shelob has to be our model here, right? Shelob is one of these spiders, right?
Yes. Shelob encounters Baron in that passage as well as another very large spider.
Right, exactly. So we're literally depicting Shelob here. But of course, we also cannot totally forget the Hobbit spiders, the spiders of Mirkwood, either. Anyway, so I think something sort of in the middle of all of these, sort of closer to the bottom left kind of.
Right. I would say the bottom left is probably pretty accurate to what we would be seeing.
Yeah. Not the totally spindly. Again, the one in the sort of middle top here looks sort of like Black Widowish.
Right.
Which again, I think that's too delicate for what we're looking for. And definitely not fuzzy. Okay, good. All right. Huon. Now, in general, we had been looking at Huon as probably roughly Irish Wolfhound.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
That was the kind of body model that we had for him. One of the things that I'm interested in Harangil's sketch here, sort of concept sketch here, is a more kind of leonine appearance, right? Which is an interesting kind. I hadn't been thinking about something like that, mostly just because that's sort of not the. Irish wolfhounds tend to have sort of narrower heads and not the, the big kind of leonine rough sort of situation. But there is something kind of presenting Huon as having a little bit more of that sort of bulk and majesty is kind of interesting. Like I hadn't really thought about it in that way before, and there are definitely things that I like about it. but I also think one of the things that I immediately think when I see a dog like this is that it probably can't run that fast. Like, it doesn't look sleek. I think Huon needs to be like clearly fast, like one of those dogs that can both run fast and run for days, right?
Right.
And dogs with the kind of like broad-chested, kind of leonine heads and tend to be a little bit sort of shorter-winded and not especially like built for power more than speed, basically. Like a Bernese mountain dog or something like that.
Versus a greyhound, yeah.
Right, exactly. Or you don't even have to go all the way to greyhound. Even just
obviously,
hound, right? Yeah, almost any kind. You look at a Bernese mountain dog and you don't think this dog could run down could run with a horse, for a long period of time. But so that, I think, again, I'm just thinking, not only, I mean, as with anything, I mean, this is one of the beauties of doing a visual adaptation, right? Is thinking about the kind of nonverbal cues that you convey, right? Like, what is this? It's not just about realism, exactly, right? It's about visual
storytelling.
cues. Yeah, exactly. And so that's both simultaneously what I kind of like about it, like that it gives him this sort of air of majesty and authority, the kinds of things that you associate, with lions, right?
But you don't want to change his silhouette too much.
Exactly. I don't want it to make it look hard to believe that he's
so he can have a little bit of rough added on, but
something,
not,
I think it could be,
but no bulk.
No bulk, exactly. Yeah, we want him to be, I think, sleeker rather than, speed and power, not just bulk and strength. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I would think. Fun. So I'm keeping moving along because we have so many slides. Okay. Costume design. All right. Zirak of Nogrod. All right. Love the beard. This is where, Marie, like with costuming, we are so like far into your zone. Walk me through what you like and dislike about costuming ideas.
So when Bree has designed the different dwarves for the first age, they each get like silhouettes, right? But overall, the general idea is to make dwarves very broad, right?
Right.
So on both of the images that Bree provided, that it looks like the dwarf is fairly big, and then it looks like the costume is fairly big too, right? There's just a lot there. Right. So that bulk is helping distinguish the dwarves from the elves in a lot of ways, just by being like, dwarves are about sturdy, durable things. You're not going to worry about your outfit getting singed in a fire or whatever. It's going to survive that. So that's pretty good. And I think Harangel has used that image as a starting point for the design to try to convey similar styles of clothing and convey some of the bulk in the outfit without having an outer coat layer. So it's not as bulky. Right. So this is like an indoor outfit.
Well, yeah,
Right, yeah, which is allowing you to show off all the decorations on it. Since Zarek is a dwarf who travels from the mountains to visit the Elven kingdoms, he's got to be a bit of a salesman. He's got to be putting himself forward, a bit of a diplomat to interact with another culture. So his clothing has to speak for him before he opens his mouth. And so putting lots of different designs into it, and presumably it would be colorful if it were colored, kind of allows him to be a louder character,
right?
While he's just standing there,
right? And he would presumably have a bunch of bling, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Right. So you can see there's a fairly intricate looking belt buckle going on, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's able to kind of have kind of these flowing sleeves and whatnot, which might not be possible for somebody who does a less fine task.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He's not going to spend as much time over like an open flame.
Right. He's not working in the forge. He's a jewelry maker.
Yeah.
So,
Telkar might have dressed a little bit less ostentatiously, I believe. In that she would have to make certain that she does not set herself on fire.
Right. Absolutely. Would the clothing of the dwarves of Nogrod tend to be like the actual fabric tend to be plainer, so as to like be the palette upon which the the jewelry is then
displayed? Possibly, but also you can work aspects of the jewelry into the costume directly, so you can do beadwork and in the embroidery, so it's not just thread, it's beads. And
so in other words, it could go in absolutely the opposite direction, and the clothing would be far more elaborate. Right.
And so all of the trim there that's on the top of the tunic, that could be done with cloth, right? You can create that. It could have threads. It could be metallic thread to give a little bit more to it, but you can add beads to it.
Right.
And intricate beadwork would be something you'd associate with a jewelry culture probably as well. So there's at least that opportunity. But I agree, if you're trying to show off your jewelry, you want that to be the centerpiece of the outfit. So a lot of solid backdrops that you then place the jewelry over would be nice as well.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean that seems the and I going back to what you were saying before, I like the idea of the breadth, like that the clothing of the dwarves you would think would be designed almost to emphasize the breadth. Like breadth is a good thing among the dwarves, right? So like heavy shoulders of coats and things to make you look even broader than you are. Like that's what they wouldn't be trying to slim down, they would be trying to bulk up, right?
It's they're emphasizing sturdiness and solidity in their outfits. The easiest way to show off jewelry is to have it right against the skin instead of against clothing. So if you really wanted to show things off, like rings are a lot easier to do that with than something that's going to sit and maybe get hidden in your clothes or caught in your clothing.
Right. Would they do earrings, like lots of earrings and stuff? Earrings, nose rings, that kind of thing? I mean, again, I'm thinking if jewelry is your primary art, right? You're gonna find you're gonna find ways to use it, right? Probably. Would they even do noses and like chains connecting nose and ear kind of? I mean, okay. But with beards, that gets weird, So.
You have to balance it with the practicality side of it. So much of how they're presenting themselves is practical that the showy stuff is gotta fit with that. So a chain that can be ripped off is maybe not gonna match that. But I don't see any reason why they wouldn't have piercings and have jewelry, right?
Right. Yeah, it could be. I'm just thinking that would be another easy way to sort of differentiate the
from the Belagost dwarves.
Yeah, exactly. Who would presumably do that a great deal less, especially if they're
Now Bria suggested that they can have also hair ornaments that would be showing off the jewelry as well.
Right. So you could have the beads and things in the beard. Yeah.
That's a little weights, right?
Yeah. No, that makes good sense. Okay. Cool. All right. Gorlem and Ivrinil. All right. So, of course, Ivrinil is. How much of her do we see?
So we only see her after she's dead.
Yeah, I know we only get a posthumous view of a theoretical fake Ivrinil, but still convincing enough that it,
tricks Gorlem. So yeah,
or deceives her husband. So I gotta look somewhat.
She has
plausible.
2 brief scenes. Yeah, I mean we keep talking about her as if she's a main character in the season, but no, she has 2 brief scenes, and it's just really sad that she's Thuringwethel all along.
Right. Yes. Okay.
Well, I think the headshot fits very well.
Love the headshot.
What you were describing, you would like Ivrinil to look like.
Yep, loved the headshot for that reason. Yeah. The headshot gives me my cute Ivrinil that I would, my cute innocent looking Ivrinil that I wanted. Yeah.
And I believe that these 2 could be an item.
Yep. Yeah. The headshot of Gorlem makes him look like he's got like the neck of a defensive lineman, right? Which is fun. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's
there's a
that's
collar
the
going
AI
on there.
what it's supposed to be doing with the collar.
Yeah, it's fine. I know. I like it.
But they both look fairly young, which is part of what we want from those characters. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
He looks a little bit the AI headshot looks a little bit Orlando Bloom, actually.
It does look ever so faintly Orlando Bloom. I was thinking that too.
I could see that. Yeah.
The shape isn't quite right, but
no.
But yeah.
There's something about the eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the mouth is suggestive. Interesting. Okay, Baragund and Belagund. All right. So basically, Nick, you took the sketches by Harangil and kind of fleshed them out with AI.
I didn't do this.
You didn't do this?
Yeah, no, Harangil did this.
Harangil did that. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Neat.
No, I have something. I have like another collection I'm working on, which is.
Oh right, you have a different collection. Okay. Yeah. By the way, I like the concept. I like the differentiation here between Baragund and Belagund. It really does suggest that perhaps if I watched this show, I might perhaps someday not confuse Baragund and Belagund, which I still do to this day.
I don't confuse the characters so much as I confuse which vowel goes with which consonant. Like I keep forgetting whether it's Balagund and Baragund, which Baragund is a character. I think there is a character called Baragund somewhere else.
It's kind of like Baragund in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Right, this is more Bremelvin art here. The Elves of Nargothan, and we looked at some of these before, right?
So you've seen this picture before, but we're now at the part of the story where they apply. So I thought I'd throw them back in because she specifically said that the design was for the Great Tales, so Baron and Turin.
Okay. So we're getting a lot of the like sort of brown and green Ranger of Ithilien-esque kind of I go about in secrecy and shoot from hiding kind of deal going on. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Cool. I wish I could speak more intelligently of costuming, but...
Well, the general idea is you can get into the technicalities of what things are made of, or you can talk about the overall effect of seeing the outfit all put together. I'm not sure you have any interest in the former, so
Well, I have even less information about the former than I have about the latter, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think if I had one note, it would be to move the quiver down to the hip where it belongs. Although I guess if anybody's going to be able to draw arrows from a quiver on their back, I guess it's going to be elves.
hear you.
Yeah.
I hear
But
you.
yeah, but hopefully what you're seeing there is color scheme and the overall effect of putting the layers together in this way and what makes it look elvish with
I
the
like I like the idea of so yeah, obviously all three of these characters are blonde, but the golden house of Finarfin is also reflected in the details.
The gold, yeah,
Yeah,
detailing, yeah.
on the clothing of the two people to the left.
Mhm.
And one thing, like, it strikes me as almost a little dwarvish in some ways, like in the way that I think about dwarvish design, which is probably heavily influenced by the Peter Jackson films,
I was
which isn't surprising because they live someplace which has been constructed by dwarves and they're probably surrounded by dwarvish architecture.
right.
Right.
So the shorthand there is that Art Deco is Dwarven and Art Nouveau is Elven because
Yeah.
Art Deco has the geometric patterns
Yeah.
Right.
and Art Nouveau is flowers and birds and pretty ladies.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
have you seen Art Nouveau? Like Alphonse Mucha is all pretty ladies.
Right. Right. But yeah, the kind of the more in the direction of geometric design, like of the gold detailing on the left hand figure, Nick.
Yeah.
Right. Compared to the purely leaf oriented or leaf direction ones on the right
While
hand side.
the silhouette is still a very elvish silhouette.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
See, you guys can do this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Working on it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very good. I love Bree's work.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been a fan from day one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so the disguise is orcs here. All right.
Right. So what Harangil has done is given us the impression of what it would look like for the character to go from their original appearance to the orcish appearance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
And I'm not entirely sure what's happening in the top image, but that is supposed to show the transformation.
Right. Right.
Seems appropriately horrifying.
Yeah, I'm like horrifying. Got it.
Horrifying.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't ask me to explain the process there.
Horrifying is yeah what we seem to go for there. Can I just say, a visual transformation of this kind is touchy, very touchy, like how you manage, like in what ways do you take an elf's face and like what aspects do you alter in the physiology in order to make it look orcish
While still avoiding accusations of physiognomy.
Well, of all kinds of things, right? Of physiognomy or frankly of racism. You know, I mean, that's the thing that...
Right. Elves that make them ugly is fraught.
Fraught. It's very fraught. It's very fraught.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is most critical to that is sort of a loss of symmetry, and a loss, like it's my understanding of the way that Tolkien described orc faces is that first and foremost, when you like, they don't look right. They don't look, they're
something is wrong here.
Something is wrong here. They're not like well put together. They lack the kind of unity and symmetry of the faces of elves and even of humans, right?
And proportions as well. You can play with proportions to make them very clearly different from human.
Yes. In fact, this would be a fascinating thing to try to do with video AI, actually, to sort of show. This is the kind of thing I think video AI would do a really interesting job of, actually, is to try to kind of warp the face, because it's really about the warping, right? It's not just about being given different racial characteristics that are associated with orcs in some way, right? It's about distortion. And I get it's extremely fraught. It's extremely fraught, but I think it's very clear when Tolkien was talking about orc faces in this way, he was not associating them with the facial characteristics of a particular race. He was talking about that kind of distortion.
Yeah. When I made a mask of an orc for myself, I started by making a mask of my own face, and then I just added putty to it in different places to try to make it look different than my face, because I don't particularly think I look like an orc. And so that idea of like, where do you put the putty, like where do you take it away, like how do you change this? I tried to accentuate and exaggerate things, so there's a lot more of a pointed chin and more of a hook on the nose, and I gave all kinds of eyebrow, like lots and lots of eyebrow, because I just took hair and put it on there. So it was interesting as an art project, but it's definitely like, did I make all the right choices? Probably not.
Right. I mean, I think one of the easiest ways to do it without leaning towards coding orcs as a particular race would be maybe to kind of look at the facial structures of non-Homo sapien humans.
Hominids.
So like Denisovans and Neanderthals, which have a very obviously different skull structure.
So usually you can see that in the brow ridge, and in the jaw.
Right.
There's usually a very significantly different jaw.
Right. And with Neanderthals, you have like the occipital bun structure on the back, which you wouldn't see too much of, but you could definitely see it if you were looking at a group of orcs.
But that's a good example of the kind of distortions we're talking. When we talk about distorting things, it's not about it's not like Picasso-esque distortion. Like, we're not talking about two eyes on the one side of the head kind of distortion. But that kind of orc should have that sort of otherness, the kind of otherness that like
there's a different skull structure underneath. To start with,
and one which I think that asymmetry should be involved, right? Again, that it's not just different, it's not just alien, it's wrong in some way. It seems warped,
So by shifting it a little bit in one direction or the other, it should
crushing it, or unevenly, diagonally, compressing, something like that.
No, well, there's a few things I can think of right off the top of my head. In one, first thing, orcs live a very, very difficult life, and I think that one of the things we've kind of leaned into as to why orcs are the way they are is because they're also culturally wrong, right? That's and so they've lived a particularly harsh life, which leads to scarring and injuries that don't heal properly and whatnot. But also, I don't imagine they get a lot of good infantile care. When my son was born, and still today to a certain degree, he had a condition called torticollis, where one side of he has too much muscle tone for a baby. And one side of his neck muscles were too tight, and so he didn't really like to turn his head that way, and so he would always turn his head the other way. And when they're laying that way all the time,
they get this flat spots,
so we had to go to a doctor and have various things tried. We had to put him through physical therapy and get him a helmet.
Get him a helmet. Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Baby helmets.
Yep.
Yep.
Which I had always thought, when I first started seeing those appear, that, oh, that's a parent that's like overly concerned about their child bumping their head, and
Right.
I could not have been more wrong.
Right.
It's nothing to do
No,
with it.
people don't realize how malleable baby
Yes.
skeletons can be.
And
yeah.
and I don't imagine that an orc infant would get that kind of care
Right.
very
Right.
often.
And that kind of
Yeah.
physiological, warping, distortion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could often occur.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So anything that could be I'm hesitant to use the word defect, but it really
Distortion.
It is. I mean, the concept of right. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean specifically like anything that could be a birth defect
Mm-hmm.
would be accentuated. Like the body would lean into that rather than care and nurture leaning out of it.
Right.
As the individual got older.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I can imagine the orcs, due to the way that they came into existence, having all kinds of genetic mutations that would lend themselves to issues like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you my favorite part about these drawings is how often Herengil draws characters with spears in their hands, because there should be more spears in fantasy.
I know. That is. I always think of you with that, Nick. It's next long-standing crusade.
The spear has killed more people than any other weapon on the planet, and that includes nuclear weapons.
So true.
Well, and we just haven't tried hard enough with the nuclear weapons, maybe.
Maybe we have tried.
Spears have a head start.
Exactly as hard as we need to.
As hard as
I was
we
going
need
to say,
yeah.
Nick, that's not something you want to correct.
Right. Exactly. It's not a race. Okay. Gorgle the Butcher. We gotta keep, because I want to get through. We're at the end. We have a big thing, and I want to save a little bit of time for the thing at the end. So I want to move a little quickly here. We've just been talking about orcs and orc bodies. In particular, Gorgle the Butcher needs to be larger, right? How else would we want to distinguish Gorgle the Butcher's features compared to other orcs? Would he be more grotesque than them? And that's kind of like the Peter Jackson deformed orc general thing that he kind of leaned into, right? Let's make the most warped one into the leader. Or do we just simply make him bigger and stronger than all the rest of them?
Maybe he actually has fewer of the distortions in some ways,
right?
Which has helped him become bigger and stronger.
Are we saying, not that we're giving the full life history of Gorgle the Butcher, but are we saying that Gorgle the Butcher is one of those metaphysical orcs, one of those like Maiar orcs?
I feel like that might be too far.
Yeah.
We had that for what's his face
for Bulldog, yeah.
Yeah, Bulldog.
Right, but
yeah.
Bulldog has lasted for hundreds of years and is a main character and is very different from the other orcs. Gorgle showed up for the Dagger Bragalok, and he's in this season, and then he gets killed.
So he's really just a bigger, badder orc, basically, who's distinguished himself for his strength and ability.
Right, so he's good at bullying other orcs, I guess.
Right. Okay.
And he has a mouth on him.
Right. Right. Exactly. Okay. That's good. Bunch of orc gear. I don't have time to talk about too much about orc gear. Though, quick question. Orc gear, one of the things that we tend to see, especially we see this in the Peter Jackson films all the time, the orc gear often looks like crap, not only in the sense that it's aesthetically unappealing, but also that it looks like it would be horribly ineffective a lot of the time.
That's definitely not first age
Right.
Angband
Right.
orc gear.
Certainly.
They've got the premier war machine going in Angband.
Yeah. Right.
And they've got characters who know how to make stuff well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there might be some ugliness to their design, right?
Ugliness and
it might-
cruelty, but not, yeah.
right. So it might be unappealing, but it's going to be pretty effectively made. It's not
Yes.
going to look like it's falling apart.
Also, some of these items were built by like Rogerin, and
Right.
and
Elf
other
slaves, yeah.
Noldor elves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Who can't make something ugly if they try.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And they presumably are trying. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we're at peak orc
Yeah.
culture here. This is not something cobbled together from bits and
Yeah.
pieces of stuff that they scavenged.
It's not
Yeah.
the orcs of the Misty Mountains in The Hobbit.
Right. Right. No.
Right.
That's,
They're being kitted out by
Yeah.
an
Maya.
organized group. Yeah.
Right.
That includes characters like Sauron.
Exactly. No, okay, great. That was
yeah.
the main thing I wanted to touch on with the orc gear, because I think that's a really important. It's and also a really radical visual shift, because people are used to the really crude looking, I mean, like dull looking weapons and everything else that the orcs usually are using in the Lord of the Rings films. So that's a major departure that I think is a really important thing to keep in mind. Okay, we have these are Luthien costumes, right? I remember we looked
Yes,
at
we're
these
switching from
before.
orcs to Luthien.
Orcs to Luthien, right? Which is actually kind of a thing we do in this season. So I remember we were looking at some of these designs previously when we were talking about Luthien.
Right.
introducing
So yeah, Katrin had put that together for our commissioning podcast to talk about how you would look at Luthien's costume. So I wanted to throw that in here before we look at any images.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Lots of interesting and unusual kinds of possibilities. I have to admit, like, the idea of Luthien wearing pants is like almost shocking to me. But it's really interesting as a result, like, given how shocking I find it. But
Yeah. Well, again, it comes with the idea of travel and conflict and things that Luthien does in the story. We need to make sure whatever costumes we give her don't limit her choreography for what the character needs to do.
Yeah.
There's ways of doing that, and you can work choreography around a costume, but we need to keep in mind what this character has to accomplish while wearing these outfits.
Well, and the other thing that occurs to me that I don't know how many times we've talked about this. I feel like I must have talked about this at some point, but I don't remember it very much. That an important consideration when thinking about a visual adaptation of Luthien is that she needs to be simultaneously incredibly beautiful, but not necessarily really sexy, right? Like,
Right.
I don't think she should look. I mean, I think if you see Luthien and you say, wow, she is smoking hot, you've done it wrong, right? I mean, that should not be the effect that Luthien has on the audience,
I agree with this.
right?
It should not be the intended effect.
No,
People are
I mean,
going
you
to be
can't
people.
control what people think, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
suggesting
but
that.
but there are images that people have created of Luthien dances for Baron where she's wearing like practically
nothing. You're right.
and you're like, I see your intent here, but I don't really see that as Luthien.
No, that's the opposite of Luthien. Yeah, I mean, yeah. No, there's
Certainly not pre-wedding.
well, and there's a kind of innocence to Luthien that is crucial, I think, to the
Yes.
the whole idea, flowers springing at her feet, right? There's a kind of innocence to her that I don't even think she loses post wedding. That I can't. She's not going to dress like, we should never at any point be dressing her in sexually provocative clothing, even under any circumstances.
Yeah.
Right. And I
agree.
that's I think I can't remember if I ever actually said that, but I if I hadn't, I just, a lot of Katrin's designs were making me think like the sort of the layers of petticoat that she's wearing in the bottom right, kind of. Like lots of floofiness, lots of like opportunity for spinning and but we're not talking about admiring Luthien's legs while she's dancing, right? Yeah. And again, like, and I would say, and I've said this many times because I still really respect this. I think that how they handled Toriel in the Hobbit films was a really good example where she
costume-wise.
Yeah, costume-wise. You were aware of I mean, like, they were not concealing the fact that Evangeline Lilly is very beautiful, right? But there was not, her costuming was not sexualizing her body overtly. No. Like, you know, there
certainly
like,
not any more than Orlando Bloom's was his.
A good deal less,
less,
actually. A good deal less. Though that's something that we talked about too. We talked about in the past that, like, actually Orlando Bloom was not, like, they could have made him a lot.
There's certainly some wasp-wastedness to his costuming on occasion. But
look, they could have done much more to emphasize. You know,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Usually you can tell if they're trying to do that with a character on film. It's usually really, really obvious.
Yes. In both, like, for men and women.
Yes. If guys' shirts are coming off at every scene they're in, you're like, I see what you're doing here.
Like, how tight are his pants, right? I mean, that's like, they never really we didn't get the tight pants, effect with Legolas. It's just not how it's not the emphasis. Just as we didn't get lots of, like, tight tops and cleavage shots, with Toriel. Like, it's, anyway. So, that's, and I think that's really important.
Or Arwen or Eowyn.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And there's an image floating around. I forget. I'm not going to call the artist out, even if I could remember, where you have Eowyn dressed in, like, a male bikini. I'm like, we're missing the point.
We're missing something,
Quite
to
heavily
be
here.
fair to that artist, if that's the image I'm thinking of, is very equal opportunity. Nobody needs any pants ever, male or female.
So they went to the Ralph Bakshi,
the Ralph Bakshi Aragorn,
costuming. Yes.
Right, but all that artists people are costumed in that way for armor, male or female. So
Right.
That one's
Speedos for everyone, right? That's
yes, exactly. You definitely want to ride into battle looking like this.
Yeah. Very practical.
That one in particular irked me. Specifically because, like, she's in disguise.
Right.
I'm keeping my voice down for the people who aren't sleeping above my head right now. She's in disguise.
Yeah.
Right. So it maybe doesn't fit the scene, but.
Yep, I hear that. Anyway, okay, all right. Moving on. Here I am distracted.
So having established Luthien needs to wear clothes.
Needs to wear clothes. That's our first exotic costuming requirement. Is indeed the presence of clothes. And again, I like that. Looking at the overall clothing concept here, like the way that in Bree's image here with Huan, we see, like, very little skin, lots of fancy, drapery and decorations. Though again, like, she's also visibly curvy as well. Again, it's not like it's trying to conceal her form entirely.
But there's layers and
yeah. And I like the intricacy of it. I like the intricacy of, like, the decorative elements on her costuming is.
Yes, and you can see that the patterns are very, like, leaf and floral based.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. I love the very intimidating Huan looking over her shoulder there too.
Like,
don't mess with this.
What are you doing here?
Right.
Viewer.
Now tell me more about the things that you were thinking of for everyday dresses for Luthien.
Okay. So I know that Luthien is almost always put in blue costumes for the very good reason that Tolkien describes her wearing a blue dress. Right. He actually tells us she was wearing a blue dress that one time. So we should
That's more than we often get. So there we go.
Exactly. We need to put her in some blue dresses. But she's a princess of Doriath. She has a lot of dresses.
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of experiment with some other color schemes and things, while making sure that every single outfit she owns is ideal for dancing in the woods.
Right. Exactly.
It was actually just just thinking about the fact that Luthien is the second most high profile woman in Menegroth, and is the most beautiful child of Iluvatar that ever lived. Every dress designer in Menegroth is going to be clamoring to get her to wear their latest design.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
She has a closet full of dresses.
Like
she is well supplied.
Nobody would, like, she would never have to pay for clothes ever, even if that was a thing that was happening in Menegroth.
Right.
Yeah. So the dress in the center with all the little images around it is kind of like an orangey brown kind of color scheme. So I was hoping that she could wear that in episode 1 when she's leading the refugees into Doriath, because that is one of the scenes where flowers bloom at her feet.
Right.
So it's springtime and flowers are coming forth. So the theme for that dress is snowdrops and her sigil.
Her sigil,
yeah. So I put the sigil on the dress because I figured good starting point. I'm very literal.
Right.
And then I put a bunch of snowdrops in where the seams would be it would be embroidery throughout, and then maybe a trim border in the different colors of the light green for spring and then the darker green. I gave her really sheer sleeves so that you can see her arms as she's dancing around.
I love the fact that you have much like in the way of arm hanging and arm drapery in almost every dress, which I think is fun. Like whether it's the actual kind of like, scarves or sleeves, or like just like long sleeves. But anyway, there are arm effects for the, for.
Right. I wanted to make sure every design was all about the dancing.
Right.
And so to make sure I was doing that correctly, because I'm not actually a costume designer really, I took images of people dancing and then dressed them.
Right.
Because I just wanted to make sure that it fit right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that first dress doesn't have any kind of belt on it. So the fittingness is on the sides. It's got some lacing there, and
I see the lacing.
And it's got a fairly full skirt so that as she dances around, it'll swirl around her. You can't tell from the image whether or not there are petticoats, but there could be under a dress like this. There could be layers underneath, so that the two trim layers would just be on the outer skirt, and there could be stuff underneath, but you can't see in the picture.
Is this what's called an A-line?
There'd be a much fuller skirt on this one than an A-line dress. An A-line dress is not a very full skirt, so we're probably not going to put in much A-line stuff. Yeah. So,
but I have been present for wedding dress fittings, so I've heard terms.
So you know how the letter A looks like this?
Yes, I have in fact seen the letter A before.
So an A-line means that the skirt comes down like that. A full skirt means you're going to make a full circle. So the skirt could actually flare up and form a full circle around your waist.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So
you're leaning more towards that kind of thing, so that
so these dresses should all have fairly full skirts. You
so
can
like
even
an A-line dress is more like your standard bridesmaid dress kind of deal. Yeah. Gotcha.
And more flat based on what you're suggesting.
So it wouldn't swoosh when you spawn.
You wouldn't get that effect. So you can have something be a full circle skirt. It could be a half circle. It could be more than a full circle of fabric. So you can have a lot of fabric in a skirt. Right. Too much and it gets heavy.
Right.
So you have to kind of balance out how swirly it is and how many layers you want. So how thick the fabric is also matters. So these are probably all fairly thin fabric. You don't see it weighing down much. The heaviest looking one is probably the green and white thing, which is really not a great drawing, but the idea would be it's like an overcoat on top of whatever she's wearing.
I was wondering about that.
A mantle.
It's got a front and a back, and there's a belt at the waist, and it would allow it to move in different directions than the skirt under it. So it could be fun. But again, that one is a bare arm design to let the arm show, because Tolkien emphasizes her arms
That's true.
in a few places. So like when she's
Right.
dancing, people are looking at where her hands are going.
Yeah.
So
Which is one of the things that I liked about all the swooshy sleeves. That
yeah, so there are
on.
some swooshy sleeves. The yellow dress is meant to look like butterflies, so it has the designs around it in to look like a butterfly wing kind of thing.
Right.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So just some different variations, but just to put some more colors in her palette than just she wears a blue dress with gold flowers every day.
Right. Every day.
Like,
Yes.
and that's why these are not for her iconic scene where she meets Baron or any of that. These are just everyday Doriath dresses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. No, conceptually, I think that these are excellent for her. The most like it's the conceptual element that I love so much, and the idea and to make sure that the choice is being made to make her look good. Or like I sometimes think about like Disney films where ball dresses that are being worn look like you couldn't even move in them, and that kind of like sometimes it seems anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Part of the problem is that costumes are almost always designed for what they look like and very seldom designed for what the actor needs to be able to do in them.
To move. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you get exceptions for like musical theater.
Right.
Where they know someone's going to have to be out there doing dance routines on stage and can't stop to fix their costume.
Right.
So those are usually built much more durable with the concept of what kind of movement do you have. A lot of arms don't let you raise your arm much. Like there's something too tight here to allow you to actually pick your arm up.
Right.
That's not very
with
helpful.
Armor too.
Right. So that's not helpful. You need to design around that. Usually the way is you just put a little triangle of fabric under here, and then it makes it a lot more range of motion-y.
Right.
But it's maybe not historically accurate, so whatever you're trying to do. But we're doing fantasy elves. We don't have to worry about historical accuracy.
That's right. Why not? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I want to move along.
Moving on. Yes.
Oh, so there's it's the mourning dress.
Yeah. So that was a completely different idea of, instead of being motion, of stillness. So she's wrapped up in this fabric.
Yeah.
And
so
it's tight around her, and there's still volume to it, but nothing about this design is about dancing.
That's a really interesting effect. Like to be able to create, because it's a dress, her wearing a dress that would not swoosh at all, is a really great way of silently saying something. That's really.
I know the
really
exact scene where this is being worn. Well, there's two scenes that I can think of.
It's in episode 13.
Well, yes.
It's the one where they're playing the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Precisely when the children run up to her and try to get her to dance with them, and she can't because her dress is too tight.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just kidding.
yeah, but the color scheme is darker, so I used it's not the brighter spring colors. It's dark, and the model who's wearing it is a statue from a graveyard, so I thought she was, suitably glum.
Suitably glum, yes. Yeah. No, that's great. Love that. Okay. Scenes. We're getting there. Boy, I gotta hurry. Okay, so I'm gonna glance briefly on this because it's getting late. So this is the conception of Ordreth and family at the very beginning of episode 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really fun kind of conceptualization here with the views and I like the freestanding things. We've got a little freestanding writing desk and a little freestanding brazier in the middle, a little loom action over there on the side. Yeah, exactly. This really helps to kind of sort of conceive of the scene. Thinking
I love
about
that
what
scene so much.
What furniture would what elf furniture would look like in this kind of thing is interesting. It being relatively minimalist, right? Like not like lots of big bulky furniture all over the place, right?
Yeah. This is a very open space concept.
Right. like you want stuff to sit down on and interact with, but you don't want it to dominate the space. You want it to be open and primarily about being in the open air and looking at the environment. That's one of the main things that, while still also taking the opportunity to make the things that you make fancy, right, and nice looking. Yeah, cool. I wish I had more time to linger on these things, but I want to get to the last bits. Okay, hang on. So I'm trying to get this. This is Baron. The concept here is Baron standing in the darkness. So it's like the darkness and the moonlight, with Luthien dancing off in the distance there.
Yeah. So after their first meeting, but before they're hanging out and having picnics together.
Yeah.
He's in Doriath, she's in Doriath, and so this is him seeing her from afar.
Yeah. The thing that amuses me most about this concept art is that it reminds me of Tolkien's image of the trolls lying in wait. I'm just saying, I think that's kind of fun. I don't know what it is about it exactly. Something about the dark trees and the sort of the lines of the shadows kind of remind me of that image. But also, I think having him standing, I also am interested in the fact that he's sort of, like, he's not like peeking out from behind a tree.
Hiding.
He's not hiding. He's just standing in the darkness, watching the light, which seems to me good in a couple ways, both in the minimizing the creepy factor and also amplifying the Thingol wandering into the glade, standing transfixed by what he sees, element of that story. So, okay. We get Breeze, Baron confronting Karkaroth thing.
Luthien encouraging Baron to get his hand bitten off.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Here, uncharitably, you could call this picture Luthien feeding Baron's hand to Karkaroth, but I like the idea of the. Yeah. It is a beautiful image. Yeah, I agree.
I don't conceive of this scene in the same way that she does, but yeah, I really do like the image.
Yeah, me too. I also like how slight Baron is. Like Baron is not beefy.
The way we've described him.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and Virus tapestries. Oh,
yeah.
With Bree, I can't even. This is phenomenal.
Yeah, this is the inspiration for that little bit at the very end of episode 13.
Yeah,
is exactly this.
Yeah. So we're just basically kind of commissioning Bree's artwork here. Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
I could stare at this for so long.
Me too. Yeah, I can't. This slide deserves a week's analysis or none. So I think I'm gonna.
You could do an entire Other Minds and Hands.
Totally could do an entire Other Minds and Hands episode on this. 100%.
And should.
Yeah. No, it's very good. No, too much. There's too much, but this is just awesome. Love Brie Melvin's work. Okay, but let's do the storyboard. Okay, so Catherine did a storyboard of the scene, which of Luthien escaping Hirelorn. So this is the scene that's happening while her song is going. Is it? Okay, her song.
Our song starts in the scene, I think.
She has multiple songs, but she does sing during the storyboard. Yes.
Okay. So, Nick, give us a 15-second synopsis of what a storyboard is and what the purpose of it.
Okay, so storyboarding is part of the previs process, the pre-visualization process, where we're taking the script and we're turning it into shots. So we can actually see, and the director can make choices about what the audience is going to be seeing, and kind of start getting an idea of how the shots are going to be framed, and turning. So basically, you go from season to episode to scene to shot, and this is where that starts happening.
Right. Okay. All right. So
that may have been 18 seconds.
That's okay. So where we begin here is where she is basically the kind of the drama of the scene that's being depicted is her convincing Hirlorn to release her. Is that the sort of the primary thrust of the scene? Well, tell you what, let's look at it and then we'll see what we think the primary thrust of the scene is. Okay. So we begin with a sort of a wider angle of Hirlorn with like her hand, there's like some evidence that she's up there, right? So we're sort of seeing her in the context of the tree, and then we're zooming in to her hand there, and then we switch around to now we're inside the tree. So this is a cool sort of establishing shot to be able to, because if we just started with her inside the tree, you wouldn't have that sense of like you're seeing the prison from the outside, right? Okay, and then
establishing shots are important. Yeah,
establishing shots are important, right? And now we're circling around behind Luthien's head, right? And looking at, so we're getting her, we're looking out. So we pivot around her. We're looking out through the branches behind her, right? So we're with Luthien looking out.
Yeah. So basically, we go from the establishing shot to a mid shot of her. Mm-hmm. And then we go to a close-up from behind her, and the camera circles around to the front.
Right. Okay. Yep.
While she is also turning, because she's turning away from the gap in the trees. There is what it looks like to me.
Right. Right.
There's motion in that fourth image there, and then we go back to a mid shot.
Okay. Right. Then we go back to a mid shot, and we go from the sort of the motion, and we can see that being also emphasized in the lighting as well. When she's looking out of the tree is when we get all the moonlight shining in on her there, like in the top right panel. And then in the bottom center panel, as she's turned away from the outside and she's turned inwards towards the prison, the lighting goes down, right? Mm-hmm. So her face drops and it's much more shadowy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that is kind of conveying that that sense of internal of imprisonment.
Yes.
What's happening in the bottom right? I don't understand the bottom.
That looks like it's over her shoulder, looking down at the ground.
Oh, down at the ground.
Yeah.
To lead to the next panels.
Okay. So in the next panels, she's seeing somebody walk by down on the ground.
It looks that way, yeah.
So she's seeing like one of the guards down there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Presumably.
So again, reinforcing the feeling of being trapped.
Right, right. So this introducing an external threat. It's a distant external threat, but there's still this sort of sense of external threat.
And one, like, it's less of a threat, I think, and more of an obstacle.
Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, not like something that's coming to get her kind of threat. But yeah. No, that's obstacle is what I meant.
Yeah, I assume these are the guards on the ground and not her vision of Baron going off and getting imprisoned or anything. So yeah, I assume that we're really seeing this and it's just an obstacle.
Okay. And so then top right of this slide, what we're getting is her laying her hand on the grain of Hirlorn, right? Mm-hmm. So we have her, so she turns from looking down at the ground outside the tree to
this wait, hang on. I think I misinterpreted this entirely. I think she is looking at the grain of Hirlorn in that upper right image, but I think that's what she's looking at the whole time. She is looking at a vision.
So this is a vision of Baron that she's seeing.
Okay. So yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's why we're getting the lines. Right, of course. So right, gotcha. So she is seeing the grain of the wood of Hirlorn is like the bars of her prison, visually, right?
Yeah.
And we still see the lines of the grain, which are again, recalling prison bars, as she's watching Baron becoming imprisoned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we get that superimposition of her own imprisonment with Baron's imprisonment.
He's in our story. This is a change. He's still in Nargothrond in this episode.
Right. So it's a prophetic vision.
Premonition, yeah.
Yeah, premonition. Yeah.
But what we get here is she enters the shot.
He's changing into an orc from frame
that's
one
what
to
I
frame
think
two
is what we're looking
Yes.
at. Yeah.
Yeah. It's his. Yeah. And interesting. Okay.
So she enters the shot and puts her hand on the surface of the wood, and then turns around towards and looks up over the camera.
Yeah. Yeah.
We get,
and now she's looking up into the sky above the tree, right? Where
Right.
like the inside the middle of the. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So then we go back to mid of her.
Right. And now we have her. So that's when she then begins. So her putting her hand down is both on the one hand like her firmly establishing like the contact between her and Baron, right, and the likeness between their positions, or at least his future position and her current. But it's also the beginning of her establishing contact with Hirelorn. As well, she's also literally reaching out and touching Hirelorn, which is then what gets emphasized as she's looking up towards her own theoretical escape. Seeing the stars, right, through the branches of the trees. And that's going to be, we're going to get that. I would think it would be relatively easy to correlate the view of the starry sky with escape from bondage visually throughout, right? Like the tower is thrown down and you're looking up at the stars. You come out of Angband and you are finally seeing the stars again, right? The mist.
So do we need
smoke's
stars over the gate at the door of mourning?
Ooh, yes, I think we
Yeah.
do.
Okay. All right, we'll put stars in
we
the
do.
sky. No problem.
Yep.
Stars in the sky. Yeah, and then So no,
Which will reflect.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because they'll reflect on the surface of the water.
The very
and then
still water.
That will make the horizon disappear.
It will make the horizon disappear. Yeah. Yep. The stars.
Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah. And if you're going into the stars, it will look less like you're going into outer darkness, into the void.
Yep.
Especially if there's the shining light. So, yeah. Okay. Sorry, not to segue back to that. Okay, but now we have her interacting with Hirelorn more, right? We begin to see her actively sort of communing and then conversing with Hirelorn.
Right.
Okay. Now we have, what is top left here on the next slide, we have Hirelorn reaching out to her.
That's what it looks
Hirelorn
like.
reaches back out to her. Okay. Now we get, is this Dairon? Dairon coming to visit?
I don't know what's going on in all of these.
No, I think that she's still alone here.
She's still alone.
I don't know what it is that she's looking over her shoulder at.
Yeah.
In the lower right, but everything else, it looks like she's still by herself.
In the top middle, we're now looking down from the stars' point of view towards her, looking up at the stars.
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
I feel like that's
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing her from above.
Oh no, I think what we're looking at here is Hirelorn's point of view.
Right.
Because in the very next slide, in the very next image, Hirelorn is leaning over her in that way.
Right. Yeah. So we get the first reaching out of the little branches there of Hirelorn to touch her, and then we're sort of now seeing her from Hirelorn's perspective. I see. That's good. And then,
And then she requests help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then she requests help.
The 87 in the lower right hand image, I think it resolves into one of the guards on the next slide. So.
Oh, right on. Yeah. I wasn't thinking it looked like 87, but I see what you meant. Okay, right. So she's looking out and she's seeing the guard and she's upset about this. So we're turning around to see it's basically like her looking into. It's like her looking into the face of Hirelorn. And the camera pulls around to seeing Hirelorn with her in the foreground, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hirulorn gives her the idea.
Whether that's intentional or not.
Huh. Okay. Okay.
Oh, I guess it
Yeah.
is because she asks, hiding under a
Right.
shadow. Yeah.
Right.
Right. So the point is,
Hirulorn is taking her hair.
Yeah.
yeah, and the tree is overshadowing her. So yeah.
So
Yeah, so
so this is suggesting Hirulorn's in on it from jump, right?
From this point, this is
From
the
this point.
first
This isn't the
interaction.
beginning.
Yeah.
Right.
This is yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right.
Because at this point, she's got her supplies. As soon as she gets the plan, she's ready to go.
So we have Hirulorn planting the plan here.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. And now we're okay. So we shift from diegetic to adiegetic music partway through the scene here, and we're getting a not yet a spinning montage. We're getting a hair growing montage.
A hair
Yes.
lengthening.
First, we need to get some hair.
we need more hair.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. A hair growing montage. Gotcha. That's dragging on the ground behind her.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got a hair cutting montage.
Yep.
Right? And we're cutting the hair.
Yep.
Okay.
And so this is now the spinning.
The spinning.
Yep. The spinning montage.
Okay. Okay.
And like the woodland
We
creatures.
say
watching
montage
her.
though. It's really just the storyboard.
It's a
that makes
single.
it look like a montage. Yeah. It's just.
It's kind of gonna feel that way because we're going to be
the whole thing
visiting...
is going to feel a little montagey. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So what we're looking at is really a single montage. We're just looking at images from
elements of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then she's okay. Right now we're doing that. We got the spinning. We're.
Get the little woodland creatures watching her.
This is the rappel down the beach thread that we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Maybe. No.
No, she's just using the branch to collect the thread.
Okay.
Right, because remember, you're gonna need the thread to weave the cloak. So this is just she spun.
We're just making thread. We're just making.
She spun the hair into yarn or thread, however you want to look at it.
And we're like adding just like a faint sprinkling of, Snow White and Cinderella with the woodland creatures.
She's all the things. She really is.
She's all the things. Yeah.
Like
she is Luthien is what Snow White and Cinderella wish they were on their best days.
To be. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We had like there's a bit in episode 13 where she's where I wrote her as being in a crystal covered beer, and I think Marie was like, "Oh, that feels very Disney Snow White." I was like, no, it's Grimm's fairy tales Snow White because that's part of the original story.
Right. Exactly.
And then I got to share with you images of crystal coffins from Europe, and you were horrified.
I wasn't. Somebody
was
that
horrified.
Was me. That was
somebody in the comments was definitely horrified.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. So we're okay. Oh, we're gathering our yarn here now.
I find the detail of the elvish ear of the guard really, really fascinating because that is quite different from any other elvish ear I've ever seen.
That looks much more Vulcan.
I was actually thinking it's more leaf-shaped than most of the ones I've seen.
It is true that you rarely see
leaf-shaped.
Yeah, you rarely see leaves shaped like, for instance, World of Warcraft elf ears. For instance, occasionally
they exist. Plenty of.
I mean, there's long, skinny leaves. Yeah, that's
some, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, the guard has a spear, and
the guard has a spear. Exactly.
Could be a willow leaf,
Could be a willow leaf. still. Anyway, okay. So we have the guard looking up right when her song stops. Okay. And then we're seeing her with her big pile of hair yarn.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Don't look at me, guard. Everything's fine. Nothing weird is happening up here.
Nothing weird is happening here. Exactly.
Right. So she picks a leaf, starts humming another tune, and then when the leaf gets down to the guard, it's the Sleepy Time song.
Sleepy Time song. Yeah. Okay.
Which means it's time for the weaving montage.
The weaving montage. Right now we're weaving the shadow cloak.
Yes.
The sleepy shadow cloak. Okay. So we get her work, and I'm noticing that Hero Lorne is once more being actively complicit through this entire process.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Of the not only the spinning but also the weaving. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Providing branches for loom parts.
Right. Well, yes, and I can see that from Catherine this is drawn by someone who actually knows how weaving works. Yeah.
Yes. Katrin has some experience with this. So
right. So that's her little shuttle, right? Mm-hmm. So she's shuttling the. Right. Gotcha. We got a warp and a woof here. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, there you go. Using words.
There I go. Exactly. I know the words. I can't always reliably point to the right things, but I know the nouns. Yeah.
And she suggests that you would not want to go overboard on any of the technical details of any of this anyway, like the spinning and the weaving and all that. We're not trying to shoot a documentary of how
it's not a how-to guide.
Do a weaving
DIY shadow cloak.
How to weave a hair cloak and put your friends to sleep in 5 easy steps.
Yeah.
While hanging out in a tree. Yeah. So like
escape from your overbearing father with this one weird trick.
Do not attempt. Yeah.
Right. So we don't want to go too far into it, but want to just provide enough details that the audience knows what's going on.
Yeah. Excellent.
Why not a warp-weighted loom? Probably space, but
right.
Yeah. So you can weave from top down or bottom up. You just have to pick one.
Okay. So we're pulling back and seeing the tree as a whole. So time is passing, right? So we're pulling back and looking at the tree as a whole, and we're looking at the position of the moon or the rising sun here. No, the moon is setting. Moon must be setting. The birds over here on the right hand side.
Yeah, I would assume that's the sun rising.
Yeah.
But and the moon has set.
Okay. All right, and now
you will notice that there is absolutely no sewing a garment out of this montage. So she touches it, removes it from the loom, and poof, it's already a cloak.
It's a cloak.
Yeah. So that is good. We at least eliminated one step of the process.
Right. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So she's poofing it into design.
She's wrapping it around herself.
She's wrapping it around herself.
Yeah. So it's not a well-defined cloak.
It's more like a blankie. Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. It's a shadow blankie that you can
shadow blankie. Yeah.
Do what you want with at any given moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now she's wrapping it around herself. She's left some thread to swing herself down. We've got Luthien rappelling down. We've got the still sleeping guard who's waking up. Mm-hmm. So we're having the guard waking up because the sun is rising and it's day, and then we're establishing her invisibility cloak, her shadow.
Yeah,
cloak.
we're doing the Galadrim cloak.
Yep.
At the gates of the Black Gate.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
So she's standing right there, but nobody can see her.
Nobody can see her, right? And that's why we're in the full light of day and everything, and then we've got the changing of the guards. Yeah. Okay. And now actual dialogue, as most of her conversation with Hero Lorne is silent.
For some.
And then we see her vanishing into the forest there at the end.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of the powerful aspects of using storyboarding is that this wasn't a dialogue heavy scene.
Right.
So
saying Luthien's going to sing and do a little montage and she's going to talk to the
make
tree
her
a little
cloak
bit.
And
It's like, okay, what's that look like on screen? What would you actually show? And so the storyboard helps to break down how you tell that story visually.
Yeah, and I love
action scenes are good for that, but also a singing montage. Yeah,
I love the again, Nick, how you were emphasizing how in a storyboard you can begin to see the kinds of decisions, like kind of like directorial decisions, right, being made. I think you can really see a lot of that here. A lot of things that certainly were not automatically evoked by the description of the scene when we talked about it, but I really love the some of the things that she's doing there. Especially in the early part, the stars and the juxtaposition of the two imprisonments and the there's a lot that I really like there. The way that she's emphasizing and introducing the magical qualities of the shadow cloak and what the point of all this weaving was. The way that Hiralorn is being actively complicit without dialogue. Right. Anyway, I thought that was good. Very cool. Well, thank you, Catherine. That was really, really wonderful. I know this kind of storyboard is a lot of work. How many panels here? A lot of panels. Right. And
again, that covers a 4 to 5 minute scene on screen, depending on how long the song is and how long you linger on each shot, but you don't linger very long on anything, so you just keep moving through the scene, you keep shifting the camera, so it's a lot of work for one scene.
Right. It was just what, like 4 minutes or something like that.
Something in that neighborhood. And the shots in modern film and television are not very long. They are usually not much longer than like 5 seconds.
Right.
You like, it's usually typically a very big deal if you have a long shot. Right. And so that makes doing images of even each individual shot very, very time consuming, and especially if you're trying to create the effect of dynamic camera moves, which Catherine is doing in this 1917 is, it kind of solidifies my point. The whole thing is done in one shot. But that's kind of what makes it a big deal. Like, that's kind of the whole point, right? But anyway, to your excuse me, to your point, this was undoubtedly a tremendous amount of work, even for such a small piece of what we've been doing. So.
Wonderful. No, that's really great. I love seeing this stuff, really just kind of making it come alive. It's phenomenal. Well, it's getting late, so we should move ahead. Our next episode will be the final episode of season 6, and we're going to go on Thursday the 27th of July, so we're going to skip a couple weeks here, and then we'll do our final one. We'll be showcasing music composed for season 6, not 100% of the music, because there is a lot of music in season 6. This is in so many other seasons we've just had like some themes that we were interested in, do this, and this there are whole big and very prominent and important songs being done in this season's with lyrics and such.
Musical numbers, in fact.
Yes, whole musical numbers, and so that's really
that's just the one we just storyboarded.
Exactly. So yeah, this is really an entirely new level of challenge for our erstwhile composer and his team. So looking forward to talking with Philip about this stuff in a few weeks. And we'll see you guys again on Thursday, the 27th. Thank you, Nick and Marie, as usual. And we will see everybody soon. And I will say, as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.